the 200 subscriber celebration, the live. I'm in appreciation of all the subscriptions I've got. I've hit 2K. I've been doing this for a year and a half. So I wanted to come over here and celebrate the 2K by doing a live question and answer. So if you can hear me, everybody should be able to hear me now. You can drop your questions in the chat. If you have a college admissions question that I can answer while I'm on this live, go ahead and drop that in the chat. As usual, you can always leave a comment below this video. Every couple days I get on here, try to answer all the new questions that have popped up. Instead of paying for an expensive consultant, you can leave your question below and I can answer it without you having to go through a lengthy process of finding somebody trustworthy or doing a whole bunch of research online. So I like being able to answer those questions and, you know, give you guys the opportunity to ask me what's up in the college world, or give you an inside peek of what is happening inside the admissions world. So now that everybody can hear me, now that everybody can hear me, right? Inside the admissions world. So yes. That the volume is working. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the first question that I had up here. I can start over. Is should you include a resume with your application? The answer for me is it depends. If you're an undergrad and you're most likely, if you're applying to undergrad, you're most likely filling out the Common App or you're filling out the Coalition app. And in those applications, you're already going to include a whole, extracurricular activity list. You're going to have a section that you list out your honors and awards. You're going to have a section where you list out your volunteer work and your unemployment and your GPA and all of your classes. So I don't think if you're going to undergrad, it's necessary to then also include a resume because you're providing all the information. And if you got to know that on average, especially a big school that had tens of thousands of students, I'm spending anywhere from 6 minutes to 10 minutes per application. So if I need to find out information in a uniform way, I'd much rather have an activities list where everything is listed from, extracurricular, honors, volunteer work, employment, that order every single time. I can streamline and standardize what I'm doing as opposed to, getting a unique resume with every application I read and trying to figure it out. Now, if you're going to grad school or applying for a PhD, yes, it makes more sense because it's going to be standardized. You're not going to have, one-size-fits-all grad school application. You're not going to have a one-size-fits-all PhD application. So I think in those instances, it's important to include a resume because you can really list out your experience. You're not going to, you can include that in your standard statement of purpose if you're going to grad school or getting a PhD. But at that level, you've worked a little bit. You already got a degree under your belt. You should have a good amount of volunteer work. And if that's the case, the best format to put all that information in is a resume. All right, so that's question number one. Should you include your resume? Yes, if you're undergrad. No, if you're an undergrad. Yes, if you're going to grad school or PhD. Question number two. These are, again, the 10 most commonly asked questions that I see as an admissions reader. I think I talked about that a lot when you couldn't hear me. Again, I'm going to cut that part out. But now that you can hear me, I'm going to go over the fact that, this is a live Q&A. So, again, include your questions in the chat or the comments below. But I'm also going over the questions that I get as a college admissions reader, as an advisor, and as someone who's always been in the college admissions world. On Reddit, on Quora, just looking at what types of questions applicants are asking. So question number two is, should I mention specific professors in my personal statement? I would say, again, it depends. As my professor would say, it definitely depends. If you're an undergraduate, I'm taking from 6 to 10 minutes. And most at that level, you have an admissions, even if it's an admissions officer who's been at a university for 10 years, the likelihood that they can connect specific professors to specific departments, especially for an undergrad application where you have an undeclared major, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get extra points because you mentioned a specific professor as an undergrad applicant. Aside from that, I just don't think it's necessary. I think you're better off talking about how your personal life, your you how you personally want to contribute on campus, how you would like to include yourself in different programs. If you go as far as saying, I want to be in this particular field of study in this particular department, I think you're better served discussing the programs that you'd like to be a part of, the research you would like to do, rather than mentioning a random professor who the admissions officer or the admission reader isn't going to know anything about, and it just doesn't serve you. Now, I say on the other hand, if you're applying for a PhD program, a lot of the times those pairings are one-to-one, meaning they're only going to accept PhD applicants who they can one-on-one pair with a professor doing similar research. At that point, it's so specialized. You can't bring in students who have such a specialized research background and pair them with a professor or put them into a program that is totally unrelated. It doesn't make sense in that way. So yes, if you're a PhD student, it definitely makes sense to mention the specific professors that you know you're already going to work with, or that you've reached out to and said that they're interested, so forth and so on. If you're an undergrad student, just leave it out. There are different other things you need to talk about in that small amount of space that you get, the 600 words or less. Number 3 is, do admissions officers verify activities list? I was saying, and I think this is where the stream, where I'm starting over, I would say that if you're including in your activities list that, I'm 17 years old and I started a business, this is a scenario that I'm thinking about where I might verify an activities list. Your activities saying, I'm an entrepreneur and last year I netted $500,000, or I netted $1.5 million, and I've been selling reusable, I don't even know, like, what is something that is complete, that's not the point. Anyhow, so they started a business, $500,000 to $1 million in revenue. This is the website. So not only do I want to go verify the activity, not in a negative way, but when somebody tells me about such an incredible accomplishment, both in the positive and maybe even the positive sense of the word, like, this is incredible in the sense that it's hard to believe because it's so astonishing, then I want to go verify that. The second part is, I would like to also put their accomplishments into context. If they're saying that I've started this business, wow, I want to see what their website looks like. Like, what are their company's values? What's the mission? What's the aesthetic? Those are things that when a student is that accomplished, it's worthwhile to figure out and to dive into. So, do it admissions officers verify activities lists? Yes, if it's something that seems, out of the ordinary, or, this is one student out of 500. Again, not only do I want to put that into context so I can give them all the points that they deserve, but I also want to verify that that's the truth. Because unfortunately, as we've seen with the college admission scandal, sometimes students do the worst things to get into school, and that's not fair if that happens. All right, so that is 3. Question 4 is, should I explain bad grades in my personal statement or the additional information section? Wow, all these answers are really, it depends. Yes and no. So if you got, the random, you're a straight A student usually, and you have the random C. It's like, okay, I would have a 4.0, but that, this one semester, this one quarter, I slipped up and got a C. Or, so that's the situation. If you're going to write in your additional information section that I got a C because my teacher was mean and we didn't get along and they were out to get me, until it's just, it doesn't add, that's a situation where it doesn't paint you in a positive light. So I'm reading that and I'm thinking, is this real, or, does this student just hold a grudge because they got a bad grade? I do think it's important to explain that same C if you were out for 2 months with mononucleosis, or if you had COVID, for instance, to explain that, usually I would be a straight A student, but I was out, couldn't go to physics or there's a discrepancy because my class, went online and there was a three week gap between lessons or something to that extent. I think if it's, a reason, a death in the family, an illness, a move, all those situations make sense to explain bad grades. But again, I don't take any situation lightly. But if you're just going to say that, my teacher made me do it, you might as well just skip it. It's not going to help you. And in some instances, it might actually hurt you. So let's see. The fifth is, does my essay really need to adhere to the word count? Yes. There's a word count for a reason. Again, some of it is because we're reading hundreds of applications in an application cycle. It's not fair for one applicant to get to write 1,000 words and explain their whole life story, and then another applicant to get to adhere to the word count and only, they only get to write 400 words because that's the word limit. So one applicant actually adheres to the word limit and, follows the instructions, and then the other applicant, writes on and on. So it's not fair in that instance. I would say the other thing is it just shows that the applicant isn't willing to follow instructions. So if they're applying to a school and they don't follow direction, who's to say that they're going to adhere to campus rules? Who's to say that they're going to abide by the honor code? So if you're already, again, breaking the rules or not following instructions in the application, my confidence in your ability to follow instructions when you get on campus declines sharply. So that's the answer to that is, do you need to adhere to the word count? Yes, if you want a successful application, if you want the best chance, I would do that because we want to know that you can do that when you're on campus. And then it just looks good. Make sure we can read it. We actually read the whole thing because we have the time to read the whole thing. All right, this is 6. Should you include social media channels that you manage in your application? If it's an impressive channel, you got thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of subscribers. We all use social media. We know what a popular account is. So I would say yes, you can include your social media information if it's a popular account. And then I would say 2, if it's not something explicit or hateful or phobic in some way, homophobic, transphobic, politically extreme. You can't really tell one way or the other if someone is going to believe the same thing as you do. So I would say not that you should sacrifice your values or not link a social media site that is value oriented or politically oriented, but definitely if it's all political and it's extreme and there are people leaving comments that could be misconstrued, probably not. I would probably not link that one. But I do think, like I mentioned previously, it does put your application into context. If you're saying, I spend my time on social media advocating for this cause, and I've managed to attract a significant number of subscribers, that's something that I want to hear about. So let me see. What question am I on? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see, 4 more. Okay. This is another question I get a lot. People want to know about formatting and length and all those things. So the question is, how many paragraphs does your personal statement need to be? There's no set amount. So someone asks me how long should it be? So the personal statement will obviously have a word. And I think this question is how many paragraphs does your personal statement need to have? So in school we learn the 3-paragraph format. I'm not saying it definitely has to have 3 paragraphs. I think it needs to fit the word count. And I would pay more attention to ensuring that your paragraphs are constructed in a way that is concise and organized in a way that is coherent. So I don't think it's necessary to worry about how many paragraphs you should have. I would pay attention to length. A general rule of thumb is a paragraph should not be more than 11 lines. So if you're thinking how many lines is this paragraph, if you're past 11, it's probably too long, and there's probably an opportunity to break it up and to make it differentiate those 2 points. So I'd say if it's longer than 11 lines, your paragraph's probably too long in most cases. And then otherwise, there's no set amount of paragraphs. There's no set paragraph length. It should sound conversational. The tone shouldn't be too formal. And that's what I would contribute. So let me see. There's some activity in the chat. Yes, if you're, I see this from Verinder. If you're building a platform, let's see. I'm building a platform and I include them activities will affect me negatively. No, I don't think. Unless the platform again is a platform, and I don't want to use Parler as an example, but Parler has been in the news lately. If it's a platform where it might be construed in a negative way, then maybe not include it. But if it's a platform where you're trying to do good in your community, if you're building a platform for say you're the vice president of the math club and you built a platform for you guys to communicate all together when you're outside of school, those are things that yes, that took time, it took dedication, it took a purpose, it took a vision. So all those things are good. So yes, I don't think it's negative. It's a negative to include any platforms that you've built in your application as long as they're kind of following the rules of what you would submit to like any academic institution. So their question is: a school wants to know why I am interested in my major. Do I need to talk about the school or should I just answer the question? I think answer the question. If you're talking about why you're interested in a major, that's what I always say is don't try to fit your answer into the prompt. If they ask you a question, answer it. Like, why are you interested in this major? And that could be any number of things. It could be that you've had a past experience where a professional in that field of study or that major helped you and you want to put that same kind of help back into the world. It can be that you come from a community that is impoverished or has a low literacy rate and you want to be a reading teacher, or you want to develop economic policy. So I think those are the kind of reasons that a school is looking for. If they ask you to talk about why you chose a particular major, I would just answer that question and not necessarily try to like shoehorn some other type of answer that I want to talk about because it's easy or I already got an answer for it. Just answer the question. Let's see. Yes, I'm failing every class. Maybe it might be good if you're going into a new semester to take fewer classes. I always think that as a grad student, I would take advantage of office hours. I was at office hours all the time. If there was an opportunity where I didn't understand something in class, I would make sure that I went to office hours to spend that like one-on-one time. Because for me, learning in a big class setting is kind of you do these three steps. For me, I do these three steps. I would read the information at home to get a first introduction, and then I would secondly see the information in class from the instructor, and then for me, for some of the more economic concepts, again, I'm a lit major, so for some of the economic concepts, I would go to office hours all the time. So office hours. Let's see. Got another question. How are elite universities dealing with non-SAT students? What I have been told to do, how we've been trained, is to focus on the rigor of the overall schedule, the rigor of senior year. So did you slack off senior year? Did you continue to take classes? And then the GPA. So three kind of academic concepts. Rigor overall in your class schedule. How many AP college honors classes are you taking? Rigor in senior year, if you continue to take that rigorous classes. And then lastly, GPA, which is pretty obvious, but definitely there's been a more emphasis on rigor and emphasis on GPA when there isn't the SAT to account for. Is there a disadvantage? Maybe that's what you're asking. Is there a disadvantage to not having the SAT? Yeah, that's fewer factors to assess a student on. Some students, they do really well on tests. Like that is where that's their bread and butter. They can really, when they're one-on-one and they're just thinking about the concepts in their head, they do really well. And so that's taken away. But there are so many disadvantages to having the SAT and ACT a part of the admissions requirements with respect to like how you can kind of train and do well on the test, where some students don't have the opportunity to retake the test over and over again. So I'd say the disadvantages to having it not available to there being a test schools being test optional is it's a factor that we don't get to use to assess students on. Is a private school worth it? I have a private versus public school video. I went to a military school and then a public school, so I haven't been to a private school. I would say the benefits to a public school are that it's usually associated with the state government, so you have close partnerships with the state research hospitals. You might have close associations with the state and local government because it's a public school. You're gonna have state-funded research labs where when you're developing vaccines, those are the opportunities that state schools get. They get the state funding and the federal funding to develop vaccines and to develop research and to publish research. Private schools, I think they definitely have more leeway. You're not beholden to the state. You don't have to. University leaders and lecturers and professors aren't beholden to state guidelines, so there's definitely more flexibility, and some students want that flexibility. They want to be able to go above and beyond with respect to resting some of the restrictions that a public university might have. And so those are the main differences that I think about. And so let me go on with question. This is 7? I think I had put 10 here. So 7, parent and family recommendations. Are they useful and valuable? I think your best recommendations will come from if you're an undergrad student, even if you're a grad student, from teachers, former professors, community members, supervisors for volunteer opportunities, and supervisors for paid opportunities. Those are going to be your best recommendations. Are peer and family recommendations totally invalid or useless? No, because I think those can speak to your character, especially if a peer or a family member, say a classmate, can really speak to a situation in which you were on top of it, where you went above and beyond to help someone. I think those can be really useful in telling a narrative about who you are and how you can differentiate yourself from everybody else. But again, in the grand scheme of things, whether it's undergrad, grad school, PhD, a job, letters from professors, former supervisors for volunteer work and paid work, and then community leaders. So if you're involved in the church, maybe you're a youth group leader. If you're involved in for instance, the NAACP, Planned Parenthood. I'm just trying to think of NRA. I'm just using examples. Community members, you're in a gun. There's all sorts of things. Thinking examples on the spot might get me in trouble. All right, so 9 is mentioning programs that other schools, good or bad. I would say if you're mentioning a summer program, so you want to say that you're applying for Columbia and you did a summer program at Harvard, you're interested in being a biology major, you did a summer biology class at Harvard, or you did a summer biology workshop that lasted 3-6 weeks. I think that's fine to mention. Is it okay to accidentally say the name of another college? Like in a YS essay, that's probably going to be a disaster. But can you mention other programs? Yes, that's not taboo. Because it shows that you're an independent learner, especially if you went to a program during the summer and took time out of your free time away from school to attend another program. I think it's perfectly fine to mention that you did this program in the summer. I'm not going to be like, yeah, they went to another school, there's competing interest. So it's okay in that instance, but always be careful. Don't copy and paste, because I have read applications as an application reader where somebody mistakenly said the wrong school name. So that's always a concern. And then my last question before I look at what's left in the chat is, what is the best font for a college essay? I do get this question, oddly enough, a lot. I would just say stick with something that is easily readable, Times New Roman or Arial. Again, with like the Coalition app or the Common app, there is no font. You just kind of submit it and it just spits it out in a bold generic font. I couldn't even tell you what it is. But if you're submitting an application where it's like a Word document or a PDF, use something that's readable. Times New Roman, Arial, 10 to 12 point font. Just keep it like what you would submit in English class. Do the same thing. It's not complicated, so always try to keep it simple. I'll tell you this, most formatting for the Coalition and Common app doesn't translate. So what we end up getting is, in the Coalition app, it's like a block of text. In the Common app, there might be a little bit of formatting. I think you can like separate paragraphs, but as far as any other formatting, it doesn't come through. So you might as well not even do it. So let me see what else is in the chat. Do you think a private school is worth it? I answered that one. Is it good because of the smaller class size? Some of the freshman classes I saw when I was a University of Washington grad student were huge. There were probably 100 plus students in those classes. Whereas when I went to military school, which is the closest I can speak of as far as seeing firsthand outside of what a public school freshman class looks like, my class might have been 20, so the different sizes are a freshman class at UW is probably 10,000 students, whereas a freshman class at a private school might be 1,200 students. So imagine like the difference in class size. It would take a lot of effort to get a 100-person class at a school where the freshman class is only 1,200 people. If you prefer a small class size, then go the private school route. If it doesn't affect you either way, then I would say a public school is definitely an option. Will financial aid requirement affect admission decision this year? I can't speak to that because as an admissions reader, I don't see what students need, whether they're need aware or need blind. I do know for international students, if you're an international student, if you can't really pay your tuition up front or pay the full price, then you're likely not to get admitted because, especially at a public university, the first priority is to educate the students in the state who are being funded by the state, and then students nationally, and then when students come in internationally, most of the time schools do expect full tuition. So it might hurt you if you're an international student. As far as financial aid at private schools or public universities, I can't speak to that as much. What is your recommendation for Asian students trying to break the mold? I won't even say this is a stereotype, but generally, if I had to put, speak broadly about Asian student applications, and I do read quite a bit of them being on the West Coast, is that Asian students, and this is more so international students than domestic students, but really highlight your leadership, highlight your volunteer service, highlight the ways in which you want to better the community, whether that's through volunteer work or through your profession. And so maybe that's not, I would give that advice to every student, but if I say there is something that I notice from Asian students, especially international Asian students, is they have very good academic profile, but they tend to not have the extracurricular profile is there. It's just like talk about it more. I see it there, but let me hear what you have to say about it. So if you have 400 hours of volunteering at a hospital, I want you to talk about that in your personal statement. So that's what I would say for all students, but particularly if I had to make a recommendation for Asian students, generally without stereotyping, I say lean into your connection to community, lean into your leadership, lean into how you want to better the community, either through your volunteer work or through your profession. So that's what I would say. When I'm reading applications and I'm giving a score, it doesn't tell me if the student is... I do see, for one school, I did see if a student was low income. And for another school, when I was reading, I did see if the student requested a fee waiver. So those two, if a student is low income or they request a fee waiver, kind of tells you if they might need financial aid. But it doesn't impact whether they get financial aid from my perspective, because I don't grant financial aid. But it does put in perspective that this student didn't have as many resources as a student who didn't have a fee waiver or isn't low income. So generally, if you have more income, you have more resources. That's the only I would say that's the only inference that I make from what I see, whether you're low income or get a fee waiver. All it's telling me is really generally how many resources you had at your disposal. That's it. Wow. So that's, once I did get the audio working, that was like 30 minutes. Again, this is the 2,000 subscriber celebration. If you guys appreciate the streams and the questions and answers and all the videos, post them to your social media. Hit that like button, leave a comment below. That's what you can do to help me out, for me to keep making videos. I'll be honest, for a long time I stopped making videos because I didn't really, it didn't seem like folks were liking the videos, but I'm back at it because I'm getting lots of positive feedback from you guys. Keep leaving those comments, keep liking the video. I think I'm gonna end up doing a regular live question and answer because folks are here and they're leaving questions and answers. So let me know what you how often you'd like to see a live question and answer. Maybe twice a month, maybe once a month. I'm thinking about doing a live Q&A so I can come on here and answer questions straight from the chat. Again, I believe in not charging an arm and a leg for college admissions advice. A lot of students cannot afford college admissions advice, so I want to give it to you for free. All you gotta do is leave a comment, ask your question, or tune in, post my videos on social media, share the channel. That's how you can best help me, and I appreciate it. See one more question, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Do admissions officers lie a little bit? Like some officers say they don't admit by major. I don't admit by major ever, so it wouldn't be a lie for me. Because if a student is applying direct admission, they get an overall assessment from the admissions teams first. So this is the general assessment. So I'm not assessing them on what majors they want to do, but I'm saying like whether they qualify to get in a university. So once they qualify to get into the university and they want to go either straight into a nursing program or a business program, then their application goes to the business school or the nursing school, and those experts say whether or not they should be a direct admit. Just in general, no, I mostly don't even look at the major, honestly. It's not an important piece of information. It has no effect on whether the student is admitted or not, or what score I give them. So honestly, I don't look at it. But again, that's the end of the video. Like, subscribe, hit that share button. I will be back next week with another video. I'm going to be talking about how colleges assess international applications. But that's what I got. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.